I need to warn you about two things. First of all, here are the things that will be spoiled to various degrees. And second, this video is not going to be coherent whatsoever. You know this weird thing you have all over you? I think it's called a body, a meat machine, fueled by that giant pink jelly bean inside of your cranium. We only get one of these, so don't you go and ruin it with tattoos, or do go and ruin it with tattoos because you won't get another chance. Is it more important to take care of your body with the limited time you have it, or is it better to live life to the fullest and enjoy the things that makes you happy and things that you would otherwise regret not doing? What if that fear of regret, the very idea of making bodily mistakes, became no more? What if the fear of becoming no more, of dying, disappeared? Would you conduct yourself differently, try new things? Are you afraid of death, or are you afraid of dying? What is it like to die? I need to talk to someone about Mickey 17. You will do. Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17 finally released, and despite being a kind of dark comedy, it triggered a very specific fear in me. I've always got this annoying self-awareness of my own body. Just the thought of breaking a bone more or less terrifies me. I'm awfully self-aware of how the ulna twists when rotating your arm, afraid that if I twist my arm too much, it's gonna snap and explode and then I die from the classic ulna twist maneuver. Is it a rational fear? No. Anyway, Mickey 17 is a body horror movie. Hear me out. Typical body horror is when the body contorts and transforms in graphical and unnatural ways. John Carpenter's The Thing is a fantastic example of this. An alien parasite that infects anyone it comes in contact with, turning them into grotesque amalgamations of flesh and bone. Even though none of these things happen in Mickey 17, nor does it include similarly graphic scenes, I feel like I still want to attribute it to the body horror genre, but in a different way.
Oh, wow! Did you see that?
The titular main character, Mickey, has signed on to be an expendable on an expedition to colonize another planet with nothing but white and snow and a hole in the ground. What does that mean? It means his purpose on this expedition is to die, over and over, and worse, to keep coming back. Mickey is nothing but a glorified meat puppet, to perform dangerous tasks and go through various experiments and then have his body be reprinted over and over again. Each Mickey wakes in borrowed skins, same memories. We are not designed to be replaceable. Philosophically, we like to think of our bodies as temporary vessels, yes, but not repeatable ones. The idea that someone could walk into a store and say, I'll take this guy's spine, this girl's ribs, and your skin, and then just go home and make a new person, call it Frankenstein's Build-A-Bear. It crosses a line we didn't even know was there to begin with. There's a mental fracture of seeing your own body outside of yourself, not just in concept but physically. The horror of body printing is not that it creates monsters, it's that it creates you, or at least something close enough to pass as you. Once scanned and ready for print, it can't be unscanned. Somewhere in a facility or a server hall, a version of you exists, passive, lifeless, ready to have a personality attached to it. Stories about respawning in movies aren't new, of course. Groundhog Day and Edge of Tomorrow are two very popular versions of this, but those movies are more time travel-y. In these movies, the day resets back to a certain point in time, where only the main protagonist keeps their memories. Those movies are more video gamey in a sense with how time resets upon failure. In Mickey 17, however, all the previous Mickey's corpses still exist, the many iterations of forgotten selves. This is where I think the body horror comes in. The 17th Mickey is presumed dead, and so they print the 18th. Only Mickey 17 survived when he wasn't supposed to. And now, the universe has a redundancy error. Multiples. If you can be replaced exactly, were you ever really you to begin with? When you are printed again and again across bodies, what survives? A face? A feeling? A promise? How long until the self deteriorates, until the mind decays after countless reprints over and over and over again in false meats? Are you still you when you respawn? There's a moment early on in Signalis when you walk into a room, or rather, you crawl into a room. On the table of the room lies a copy of The King in Yellow. Even earlier than that, you wake up on a ship that crash landed, the Penrose 512, and find yourself on an alien planet. Nothing but snow and white space and a black gate that leads to a deep hole. At the bottom of the hole, you crawl into a room. On the table of the room, you interact with. From the moment Signalis begins, something feels off. The entire intro seems to have been a dream or a memory. The hole you crawl in from disappears and the room seems impossible. How can this all exist on a planet you just crashed on? Who or what is that broadcast for? And why the King in Yellow? I am now going to try, and ultimately fail, to walk you through the story of Signalis. A blue screen flashes alongside a boot up sequence and you come about on the S-23 Sierpinski with no explanation to how you got there. All you have is a promise, one you intend to keep by returning to your ship, the Penrose 512, and rescuing Ariane. Signalis is a survivor horror game that takes heavy inspiration from old Silent Hill in many more ways than 20. But it's also overflowing with references to other literature and art. Francisco Goya's black paintings can be found every here and there. There are several references to Lovecraft and to The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers, both to the book, but also to the play The King in Yellow, found in the book of the same title. A play that makes people mad when experiencing it. There are many, many appearances of the painting series Isle of the Dead, which represents repetition through the same isle in many different iterations. You play as an Elster unit, basically an android, or as they're called in Signalis, a replica, aptly named Elster in search for Ariane Young, your gestalt, or human pilot who also happens to be bioresonant, meaning she can do all kinds of telepathy and magic stuff. Ariane shows you visions. One of these visions early on is nothing but snow and white space and a black gate that leads to a deep hole. At the bottom of the hole, you crawl into a room. On the table of the room, you interact with. Following along? No? That's okay. I've played the game 4 or 5 times now and I don't either. In fact, no one seems to have a firm grasp of anything in this game. It's all interpretation. Is the entire game a fever dream trapped inside a decaying Elster? Is it all a mental projection of Ariane's bioresonant abilities? Is it all a dream by a mad god? Why are all the replicas named after birds? What is the importance of colibri? Dying in games is a sort of common occurrence. In multiplayer games like Call of Duty, you just press a button to immediately respawn and go again. It's mostly an annoyance. In single-player games, it carries a bit more weight. Having to reload from your last checkpoint to try again, some games even make death a mechanic. You die and time rewinds, the world resets. Death is not a canon thing, the game's universe doesn't react to the fact you've just magically reappeared. There's a comfort in that rhythm, a way to separate yourself from the stakes. In Signalis, death works the same way in a game mechanic sense, but narratively that comfort dissolves. You are not special, not a chosen unique replica. You're expendable. Just like Mickey, if you die you're just reprinted. Except unlike Mickey, who has his original mortality and impermanence taken away from him, you were never fleeting to begin with. Designed, not born. Manufactured for obedience, for loyalty. If your body was to break, if your programming was to fail, a new replica would simply be printed. This is the ideology of replicas, constantly monitored for corruption and deviations in their behavioral templates. If they begin to remember too much or develop too much of a personality, they are disposed of. Memory is dangerous. It creates the illusion of individuality, and that illusion threatens the entire replica system. When you die in Signalis, you're thrown back to the main menu, having to make the conscious decision to continue and boot up a new Elster unit. The Elster you play at your last checkpoint after you die and respawn is not the same Elster you were before. It's implied this unit has just gone through the exact same motions you did previously to avoid having you replay the entire game. Again, it's a narrative choice, not a gameplay mechanic. When you die in Signalis, you come back, but you don't reset. The world continues, the rot spreads, the pain lingers. There's a moment when you're reprinted in Signalis, when you find a black gate that leads to a deep hole. At the bottom of the hole, you crawl into a room. This is the horror of body printing, not just that you can be replaced, but that you will be replaced. The continuity of the self is a lie. What you call you is just an accumulation of habits and errors and fragments of someone else's dream, running on meat and memory. Once you meet Adler, he gives you a warm welcome by shoving you down a broken elevator shaft, clearly aware of your previous attempts, as he tells you shouldn't have returned. The elevator shaft is so full of dead Elster units that it's overflowing to the floor above where you land, and Elster doesn't really react. This is not the first time, nor will it be the last. Despite keeping all the memories of past lives, at least this much is clear. Your body is not your own. Rather, it lets you see how dying over and over affects the world around you, the slow dislocation of the self, the paranoia of seeing another version of yourself staring back. The haunting question of whether you're the same Elster you were before you died, or if you're just a better imitation, with lowered risk of committing the same failure again. This repetition is what the game is about. The endless loops of waking up on a ship with nothing but a promise. This is where the horror of Signalis lies. Not in the act of dying, but what comes after. Respawning isn't a mercy, it's erosion. The body you inhabit is not just your current you, but a record of all of the violence, the love, the memories, and the promises made unbroken. There's an achievement in the game you get when you die 16 times in one playthrough. The description of the achievement is Ship of Theseus, and can be tracked in-game in your diagnostic screen by how many triangles you have on your body. I can't believe that's a line I just read. The triangles might be referencing the start to a Sierpinski fractal, an endless loop of triangles. I'm gonna play the Isle of the Dead clip again. Look at them go. Whee! The theme of the video is repetition, just let me have this. The Ship of Theseus, as many of you probably already are aware, is the theory of if you have a ship that is having its planks replaced one by one, once all the planks have been replaced, is it still the Ship of Theseus? If not, is the genuine ship the combination of all of its original planks? At what point does it stop being the Ship of Theseus? Is it once that final plank has been replaced, or is it somewhere along the way? Are you your body? Or are you the thoughts and memories and dreams and aspirations of whatever is going on in that jelly bean of a brain of yours? I think we can all agree we are not our bodies, but rather the abstract cosmic horror ether storm brewing in our heads. Do you understand now what I mean when I say Mickey 17 is a horror movie for people like me? If you were to take all of the original planks from the Ship of Theseus after they've been replaced and build a new ship, would that too be the Ship of Theseus? And we now have multiple ships, or is it just a crude imitation? The vessel rebuilt, the self unknown, the name of Theseus on somebody else's hull.
I have interacted with other versions of myself, but I worry one day I will re-experience these same interactions from their perspectives. But are they truly me? Or just hollowed corpses? This may be the face of things to come.
In Housemarque's game Returnal, the game starts with Celine crash landing on an alien planet in search of a signal dubbed the White Shadow. Returnal is a roguelite third-person shooter. Roguelites build on the principle that death is a mechanic. Every run you learn new enemy patterns and map layouts, maybe unlock some new items, inevitably die to the new thing, then respawn and try again with new knowledge and new mechanical prowess. One of the challenges the writers of roguelite stand before is having a narrative reason for respawning. Take Hades as an example. When you die, you're being dragged back to hell so you can try and escape again. Whereas in Risk of Rain 2, when you die, you just die. It's purely a game mechanic for the player to try again. This is not a critique of doing it that way, but giving the game a narrative reason for respawning arguably makes the journey of progression much more interesting and intimate. It's not just you, the player, making progress, it's the character you play as. Only in Hades, Zagreus is dragged back to hell, still himself, and in Returnal...
Checking identification on helmet. It's...
The game starts off shrouded in as much mystery as the initial first impressions of Signalis. What is the White Shadow Signal? What kind of planet is Atropos? Who are the Severed, and what happened for them to go near extinction? Why is everyone named after Greek mythology, and what is the importance of Colibri? The planet, Atropos, named after the goddess of fate, Selene, goddess of the moon and daughter of Theia, who also happens to be the name of our Selene's mother as well. The name of every boss is linked to a god or titan in Greek mythology. There's even a book, The Adjudication of Zeus, in the cockpit of Selene's ship Helios, the personification of the sun. The thing is that this isn't a real book, it only exists in the cockpit of Selene's ship, yet it's never mentioned outside of that. It's never really mentioned at all, it just lays there for you to maybe see. I mean, hell, even the in-game currency obolites is likely a reference to obols, a currency used in ancient Greece. The game has an obsession with Greek mythology, but it doesn't really give us a reason as to why at this point. The planet Atropos, like you, is a living, breathing thing, constantly shifting and changing.
It is impossible to escape. I have tried everything. I'm always brought back by... There is a moment between death and rebirth when tentacles drag me down, screaming, drowning, returning.
Every time you die, the planet rearranges itself. This is common practice in the genre, each run having different tiles to give variety to the gameplay as to not stagnate as quickly. But in Returnal, like dying, it's not just a game mechanic, but a narrative one. The planet not only rearranges itself, but adapts to whoever experiences it, bringing in things from their memories and their past. Early on, Selene finds her own house, and later the key. Each time you visit the house, something is different. Different parts of the house open up, phones ring and paintings shatter. But one thing remains consistent. The astronaut.
What do you want?
Adorned in older, more akin to the original Apollo crew spacesuit rather than Selene's more futuristic one, the astronaut just stares at you.
Menacingly!
And then you're kicked back out into the hostile forest of the planet. However, the planet does not care to clean up the corpses of the Severed, nor the corpses of Selene displayed across its terrains and biomes. You find audio logs recorded by past selves scattered throughout the planet, Selene's psyche breaking down in different fashions.
All evidence suggests an exceedingly regimented hive mind. Curious. How would it feel to be a part of such a symphony? There wouldn't be any selfishness or obstacles. Just endless, flowing union. A beautiful song that would never stop. A hymn of liberation from want.
It's unclear here what's causing your own corpses to remain, or you to come back. If it were a time continuum reset, you wouldn't find your own body on display, you would simply just reset and respawn like in Edge of Tomorrow. If it were a body printing situation, you would presumably be aware of it or find any evidence of it along the way, like in Mickey 17 or Signalis, but none of these happen. There's never a clear answer being presented to you as to why this is happening. Selene thinks it might be the planet itself, refusing to make itself understood or comprehensible. In the third and final act of the game, the audio logs from past Selenes are corrupting more and more in their contents.
If I peeled back my skin, what would I discover hiding inside?
This is the audio log of Selene 16, or Selene 17, or Selene 451. It never really makes itself clear. What matters is that Selene too starts to wonder about the nature of her own body. The final boss is a giant Severed, named after the Greek goddess of indignation Nemesis, who would punish humans for cruel acts or for their excessive luck. Has this whole experience just been one big punishment for Selene? In the ending, you find the source of the White Shadow signal. It was how you escaped.
White Shadow. You were how I escape.
Time works in weird ways on Atropos and is not linear. The White Shadow is not what lured you to Atropos, it's what helped you get out. Through this signal you managed to send out a distress call, and help is on its way. You can finally escape. The epilogue ends with Celine coming home to the same house you visited before on Atropos, living out the rest of her life in peace and solitude, spending time with her family, dying of old age. As a replica, you're biomechanical. The blood you bleed is not the blood you own. It's part of the printed oxidants that make your mechanical body churn. There's also a note stating that it's not recommended to eat the bioengineered flesh of replicas based on previous long journey missions, hinting at the fact that another crew's gestalt tried to eat their designated replica. When I first read this, I thought it was just disgusting, but now I also kind of think it's a cruel joke. Like, the only consistent source of meat in this universe is being printed and is inedible, so if you do end up starving, it's just teasing you. Still, don't eat bioengineered flesh, kids. Like bioengineered flesh, not flesh kids. Though you also probably shouldn't do that. In the second chapter of Signalis, you find yourself in nowhere. After descending the elevator down to the mines, jumping down a few holes to descend even further, you find yourself in a locale made of flesh. Here, little makes sense. You enter a room from the left and come out from the left again. Blood seeps from the walls and a cage thing come at you. No, really, it's called a cage thing. The cage thing don't walk as much as it spills. I don't think its name is a metaphor for anything, it's just what it is. A body held together by a cage and suffering. As you, a replica, your body is synthetic, printed, engineered, not born, but still you bleed or spill. Your mechanical body is also being a sort of cage thing. There's almost an intimacy to bleeding in the fleshy halls of Chapter 2, likely made from the same bioengineered meat as you are. Also likely not a real constructed place, but a tumor that's been allowed to grow for too long. A cancerous manifestation of a subconscious. At the end of the chapter, once you've collected all of the plates to open the final hexagonal gate, despite all the descent through the elevators and holes and flesh pits, you come out to a desert, no roof. Nothing but sand and red space, and a black gate where you find the broken body of Adler. He asks what waits beyond the threshold. You're so close now. The Penrose 512 is nearby, Ariane is waiting. Beyond the threshold is nothing, emptiness, void. You find the corpses of the many Elsters that tried before you, rotting, decaying, does not matter, you press on. The result of the countless repetitions pave the path to the Penrose. The Isle of the Dead paintings flash alongside a sea of memories that flashes in from the, at this point, Elster hive mind. Once you get on top of the Penrose, you too fall short. A promise made, a promise broken. There are many questions left unanswered in both of these games, but that may very well be their message. Not everything can be explained. Maybe there isn't a point to everything. Maybe things just are. And then you die. But it's in the fight, in the struggle, and in the dedication to keep going forward that you find meaning. It calls me in a sea of flesh. We will become one, but I can never go back to being me.
Wake the fuck up.
Belster.
We have
Promise to keep. Yeah, of course it was a fake out ending, but come on, you already knew. Anyway, let's go back to being serious. The memory of how you got here in the first place floods in. Your home planet is dying, so you got blasted off in a random direction in space, just you and Ariane, one of many crews, in hopes of finding a new habitable planet for the rest of mankind to colonize. Sounds like a bad plan? It is. Once the expedition inevitably fails after about 3,000 cycles, a cycle being about the length of a day, you get a message to the Penrose 512 saying that you're doomed, basically, and that you shouldn't prolong your suffering. Congratulations, comrade! You've survived 3,000 cycles, reaching the final phase of the Penrose program. With the end of the operational lifetime of your replica unit approaching, it is time to prepare for the final phase of your mission. If you have not found a suitable world for landing by this point, accept that you will not— oh, shit. The rest of the note just recommends you don't ration out supplies and instead ask your replica for a swift death, commending you for having served your nation by partaking in a glorious demonstration of their power. You should just lay down and die. You've gone too far, found nothing. You will not find anything, and even if you do, who will come? Who is left to even come and save you? Or make the journey along with you? The nuclear reactor starts to fail and radiation spreads through the ship as it starts to decay. Notes are scattered of Ariane's developing disease, likely radiation poisoning, of hair falling off, and of her fatigue due to insomnia. Ariane is slowly dying. The same decay we've gone through the entire game is what Ariane is going through at this very moment. But Elster doesn't have the heart to let the love of her life die. After about 260,000 cycles, she put her away in the ship's cryogenic pod. Elster is an android, a replica, does not age, does not fall ill to the radiation, but decays all the same. When we find that original Elster slumped over, your reaction is not despair, but rather— The final chapter brings you back to the S-23 Sierpinski. Again, unclear what is real and what is part of the dreamstorm caused by Ariane's bioresonance, but you push through, nonetheless, as you always have, and as you always will. This is where I need to tell you about my favorite painting that shows up. It's found in chapter 2, in Nowhere. It's burned, beyond recognition. The plaque just reads, Metamorphosis. I think the destruction of the painting perfectly captures the chaos of the bodily horror present in Signalis. It's never really obvious which characters are real and which may or may not be several characters at once. You've gone through so much change at this point, so many variables of metamorphosis that it's all just turning into soup. Once you reach the hospital bed where Falke lays, the final confrontation begins. And the game ends for real this time. Depending on which of the 3 base endings you get, Elster either lays next to Ariane after she no longer remembers who Elster even is, eventually dying of your wounds. Or she kills Ariane, fulfilling her final wish. Or refuse to enter the cryogenics room where Ariane lays and takes off her breastplate and lays down and die on the red sands. It is not up to you whether you keep the promise or not, through your actions, and the actions of all of the Elster units that came before you. So, what is the game really about? Well, if you've played a survival horror game before, you know there's a secret ending. There's always a secret ending. And it's very convoluted to get. It's kind of par for the course at this point. Once you beat the game for the first time and start a new playthrough on the same profile, listen to this ear-bleeding screech on a specific radio frequencies in specific areas, download and run a fucking SSTV radio signal decoder, set it up to listen to your game, let it take 1,000 years to decode Saturn Devouring His Son by Francisco Goya, and 2 other places. Repeat this in 3 other locations to get those other images, whatever, good luck. Go to the part of the map where these images are taken, use the frequency to acquire 3 keys, walk into a room, or rather crawl into a room. On the table of the room lies the king in yellow. Yeah, you get it at this point. And there's a code you need as well. Surely it won't be long, right? Yeah. Once you pop open the safe with the 20-number code from the intro of the game, you get a lily. Once you grab the lily, the secret true ending plays. Elster places the lily on one of the 6 pedestals, forming a hexagon, as the giant red eye watches over you. It calls me. In a sea of flesh, we will become one. But I can never go back to being me. Maybe this is the ending that will explain it all. Maybe... There are so many plot threads and characters that I haven't even mentioned. I feel like I've talked about Signalis for way too long, and yet I haven't even scratched the surface of its depths. That sentence doesn't make sense. You know what I mean. Like Lilith Ito, who is the human that all the Elster replicas are based on. We see flashes of her in quick memories. How Alina Seo and Ariane Young are the same person. How the photograph of Elster and Ariane are actually Elster and Alina, or Lilith and Alina, but Alina isn't real, and maybe she is, and her hair changes throughout the metamorphosis of her becoming Ariane, of how Elster's personality is bleeding into Falke, but also maybe Falke is Ariane. And I haven't even mentioned, I did tell you I was going to try and fail to walk you through Signalis. It's like every time you think you get close to an answer, the game throws you 512 more curveballs, and then you realize there are other characters mentioned who bear way bigger significance and importance than you ever thought was possible, and they could change everything. And what is the deal with Colibri? I'm gonna talk about Returnal now. 63 years. The forest has changed. Time affected it as much as it has affected Celine. Celine lived out her life for 63 years. Living, loving, paying taxes, working, aging, dying, and then waking up again on Atropos.
No, I can't be here. I escaped. I was... Helios. You're still here too.
It's about this time I started to ask, who is Helios? Celine previously talked about the ship as if Helios is the ship's name, but returning after 63 years, she talks about Helios in a much more personal way.
Helios, how old would you be now?
At the start of every run, you get the text, warning, Helios abandoned. That's a strange way of saying you're leaving the proximity of your spacecraft. Who exactly are the Severed? What caused them to go near extinction, and how are they connected to the... There are notes and archives about their culture and a bit of their inner biologies, but the game never tells you what they are or how they came to these circumstances, because it doesn't matter. The Severed are a red herring. The events of the game aren't to be taken literally. I will now put my head on the chopping block and tell you my interpretation. You may, if you will, be my executioners. Celine's mother Thea was an astronaut, bound to explore the depth of space with the original Apollo crew. Due to Thea's time-consuming job, she was often absent, and Celine felt neglected. Wanting to follow in her mother's footsteps, Celine applied for the Astra program later in life, but was rejected due to her unstable mental condition. We see pills laying around her house, audio logs about not telling Astra of her medicine. This all leads to a downward spiral, represented by the game's descent into the depths, in its final 2 acts. Once you beat the final boss and make the last descent, you come face to face with a car underwater. Celine and her son was driving in the woods at night. Her son asks,
"Do you see the white shadow?"
likely mentioning the reflection of the moon on the water. Celine ignores him, but due to the medicine she got, hallucinates her mother as an astronaut, the aspirations she's always reached for, the white shadow that's always hovered over her.
When we look back at the monumental success of the first crude tragic car accident occurred in the Okanagan Wenatchee landing, it is impossible to divorce the forest. Although authorities have yet to identify the mission's significance in itself from the effects the cause, as road conditions were optimal, the car broke through a guardrail and plunged.
Would it be safe for me to drive afterwards? I had no idea. But what about prep time and recovery? I'm in the middle of a lot right now, so... No, it's... I wouldn't want anyone present. No one can know about this.
Celine loses control and swerves off the bridge into the water. After struggling for a bit, a giant monster pulls her out of the water but leaves her son to die. Oh, and her son's name? The events of Returnal is a form of self-torture. Atropos is a representation of hell. Celine is in utter denial. Instead of taking responsibility and facing the truth, she makes up a monster that pulls her from the car and saves her life. How Celine actually survived the crash is unknown. Maybe my interpretation of the game is wrong. Maybe the theory crafters on Reddit are correct and Celine and Thay are the same person and the planet is a real thing and the game is entirely about the Severed and it was actually Celine in the back of the car. But I don't think I care, to be right. I don't think the game cares either. Signalis and Returnal lead you down several rabbit holes. They're both about the degradation of memory, the loss of self, the mishandling and compartmentalization of trauma. They're both about coming to terms with your own mortality and impermanence of your flesh. Atropos is Celine's interpretation of hell, the endless trauma loop of losing a child to your own recklessness, a punishment of the gods. The Greek mythology in the game doesn't matter, it's not what the story is about. They are self-inflicted justifications Celine come up with as a reason as to why this is all happening. All of it is a witch brew of her experiences and memories crashing together. Signalis might all be a dream, or at least a fabricated reality caused by Ariane's bioresonance, a sort of mental shockwave that echoes in all of the Elster units. Or it might not be. It could all be real, and the visions we see of Ariane and her memories are a cry for help, begging Elster to end her suffering and her life, to stop her from endlessly decaying in the cryopod. Both of these games present a deeply cryptic and difficult to understand story, because that is the point. The games aren't about the big conspiracy or the science behind their alien planets. It's about the degradation of the self in trying to understand it and doing anything in your power to reach a satisfying conclusion, because we want conclusion. I've spent days now frantically scouring the lore of these games, reading up on all of the different theories and analyses to try and understand it better. And yeah, maybe I'm just stupid, but there came a point during both of these games where it all just felt like primordial soup. Like there are so many threads to follow. You're knitting a sweater of absolute entropy that will fit no one. Everyone is right, every theory has some value, but at the end of the day, does it really matter? Both the bodies of Elster and Celine are found slumped over, failed attempts and mistakes made. But their bodies in this case also represent a failure to make sense of it all, and in the end...
Why does it remain silent? After everything, am I still unworthy?
These games are fever dreams with a purpose, and that purpose is to answer the question of how many times can I be me? When Adler asks Elster what's beyond the Red Gate, I think she's genuine when she says it does not matter. Not just because she doesn't care due to her dedication to the promise, but simply it does not matter what's beyond the gate. Stop frantically looking for answers and start just feeling. Let these stories play out, let them present themselves, not what you try to make of them. Like the writers of the games are just asking you to sit down, stay a while, and listen. Signalis tells you it's okay to appreciate memories as fragments and for what they are. Returnal puts you, the player, in the same shoes as Celine, making you think it's all real, giving you first-hand experience of the traumatic episodes she goes through without the context of why.
I alone am worthy.
Like NoClip Crew said in his video, Signalis doesn't want you to understand. And I think that applies in some parts to Returnal as well. While it does paint a clearer picture, it's still not conclusive. There's still so much room for theories. Every answer has a question inside. Every question leads to another rabbit hole. And yet I will never stop looking for these answers, never stop searching for a deeper meaning and scrape the bottom of the barrel of truth. I think there's something innately human about the limitation of our own experiences. We want to make the most out of everything at all times. I don't want to live with the regret of not looking into something deeper when I think there might be something there, and even if that something ends up just being a mirror reflected back to you saying,
What are you doing? Wake up.
that's enough. Everything in these games is familiar but haunted by implication, and the further you go, the less you're motivated by survival and the more you're propelled by something else. You're descending not just into the game, but into yourself. Into a promise, maybe, or into a memory you can't stop replaying. Every scattered body is an attempt, every decaying vessel is a record of a life. Each body represents the persistence and dedication to unmask the truth. This body is not my first, and it won't be my last.
C'est mon cri, mais voilà tant pis.